The sky was burning. Her world had ended. The alien girl stood on the edge of the ruins, watching the last fire fall from the broken sky. The ground shook under her feet. Buildings crumbled like sand, and the screams of her people were swallowed. By silence, she was left with nothing, not a family, not a home, not even a future. Her ship had been damaged during the escape. She climbed inside, shaking, her hands covered in ash, her eyes red from smoke. The engines roared weakly, and she set a course anywhere that was not fire and death. The stars blurred as the ship flew into the void, but even the endless space felt like a grave. Days passed, and the ship drifted like a dying bird. Food ran out, water ran dry. Her body grew thin, her voice cracked when she tried to speak. She whispered to herself, trying to remember songs of her people, but even those sounded empty. Her heart was heavy. Why had she survived when so many had not? One night, alarms echoed through the dark ship. A planet appeared ahead, blue and green, glowing like a jewel in the night. She did not know its name. She did not care. It was her last chance. The ship shook as it entered the atmosphere. Flames burned around the hull. Her eyes closed as she prayed to stars that no longer answered. The ship crashed through the trees, tearing the earth open before falling silent. When she woke, there was only pain. Her body trembled, her skin bruised, her breath shallow. She crawled out of the broken metal into the cold night air. Strange smells filled her nose: fresh grass, wet soil, the distant sound of water. For the first time in days, she breathed deeply. But her peace did not last. Voices, she froze. Shadows moved between the trees, carrying light, strange creatures, tall, walking on two legs, their faces hidden under the glow. She pressed her body against the dirt, heart racing. Were these hunters, enemies, or something worse? The lights grew closer. She could hear their language, low, harsh, but alive. She had never heard such sounds before. Her weak body wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. The creatures reached the wreck, pointing, whispering. She knew they were searching. They would find her. Her hands closed around a piece of broken metal, sharp and jagged. If they tried to hurt her, she would fight. Even if it was her last breath. The shadows stopped. One of them stepped forward, his light falling on her. He was not like her people, his skin pale under the glow, his eyes wide with surprise. A human. He did not raise a weapon. Instead, he lowered his light and slowly reached out a hand. The alien girl trembled, unsure. Her world had burned because of kindness betrayed, because of trust broken. Why should she trust now? The silence stretched, filled with her ragged breath and his steady patience. Finally, her hand loosened around the sharp metal. Her body gave in. She collapsed into the dirt, her vision darkening. The last thing she saw was the human kneeling beside her, his voice soft, though she did not understand the words. Darkness took her, but in that darkness, for the first time since her world had died, there was no fire, only a faint, strange hope. The night was quiet except for the crackle of fire near the wreck. The human stood over the fallen figure, the strange alien girl. Her skin was pale with a faint glow, her hair tangled with ash and dirt, her clothes torn from the crash. He had never seen anything like her. For a moment, fear struck him. Was she dangerous, or was she dying? His name was Daniel, a farmer who lived far from the city. He had been searching the forest for missing animals when he saw the fire falling from the sky. Now, instead of a wild beast, he had found her, a stranger from the stars, lying broken. In the dirt, Daniel knelt beside her, his lamp trembling in his hand. She was breathing, but weak, shallow, almost fading. He whispered words she could not understand, words of comfort. Then, with a careful breath, he lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, as if the weight of her sorrow was heavier than her body. He carried her through the trees, the night filled with the sound of his footsteps. Every so often he looked down at her face. Her eyelids fluttered, as if she was fighting to stay in the world. Her lips moved, strange sounds escaping. He did not understand, but he whispered back anyway. "You're safe now, I'll get you help." The farmhouse appeared in the distance, a warm light glowing from the windows. Daniel pushed open the door with his shoulder, careful not to drop. The smell of wood and bread filled the air. He laid her on the couch, his heart racing with questions he could not answer. Who was she? Where had she come from? Why had the sky brought her here? He searched for water and bread, placing them on the table. When she stirred, her eyes opening slowly, she saw the human again. She flinched, trying to sit up, her body tense. Her gaze moved from his hands to the food, then back to his face. Suspicion burned in her eyes. Why was he not hurting her? Why was he feeding her? Daniel held up his hands to show he meant no harm. He broke the bread and took a bite himself. Then he placed the rest in front of her. For a long time she hesitated, hunger fighting with fear. Finally, her shaking fingers reached out. She bit into the bread, her eyes widened. The taste was simple, soft, warm, so different from the cold emptiness she had known. She drank the water next, her throat aching as she swallowed. Every drop felt like life returning to her. Daniel watched, his face soft with concern. He did not know who she was, but he could see her pain. It was written in her eyes, in the way she held the cup like it was her last hope. Silence filled the room. Two souls from different worlds. One human farmer, one lost alien girl. Neither could speak the other's language. But something deeper was already forming. A bridge of kindness. Outside, the wind howled. The forest whispered secrets, and in the distance, the wreck of her ship still smoked, unseen. Shadows moved through the night. Others had seen the fire too. Others were searching. But inside the small farmhouse, a fragile moment of peace lived. The alien girl leaned back against the couch, her eyes still on Daniel. Her heart whispered warnings her people had trusted before and paid in blood. Yet this human's kindness was real, simple, uncalculated. Could kindness still exist in a universe that had stolen everything from her? Daniel pulled a blanket over her, his hands careful. "You'll be all right," he said softly. She did not understand the words, but she felt them. For the first time since her world turned to ash, she closed her eyes without fear. Sleep carried her into a strange new dream. A dream not of fire, but of hope. And Daniel, sitting by the fire, knew one thing: his life had just changed forever. The storm came at dawn. Rain hammered the roof, thunder shook the walls, and lightning cut across the sky. Daniel stood by the window of his farmhouse, watching the dark clouds twist above the forest. Beside him on the couch, the alien girl stirred, her silver eyes reflecting every flash of light. She woke to the sound of thunder, her body tense, her hand reaching for something that was not there. Her weapon, her people, her past, they were all gone. What remained was only fear. And the strange human who had given her shelter. Daniel turned to her, speaking softly. "You're safe," he said. Though he knew she could not understand, still, his voice was steady, calm, the kind of voice that carried warmth even through the storm. She studied his face, searching for lies, but his eyes were steady, not like the eyes of conquerors or soldiers. She remembered. Her stomach growled, breaking the silence. Daniel gave a small smile and walked to the kitchen. He returned with more bread, fruit, and milk, placing them in front of her. Again, he tasted first, showing her it was safe. Slowly, she ate, each bite restoring a little more of her strength. For a while, they sat in silence, the storm raging outside. The alien girl wrapped the blanket tighter around her. Her mind was a storm as well. She wanted to trust, yet fear whispered that kindness always carried a cost. Her people had once welcomed allies too, and in return they were betrayed. Could this human be different? Daniel, sensing her unease, tried something new. He pointed to himself and said, "Daniel." Then he waited, his eyes kind. She hesitated, her lips trembling, but finally she whispered a sound. Broken and weak, it was her name, alien and soft. Carrying echoes of a lost world, Daniel repeated it carefully. almost clumsily, but with respect. For the first time her eyes softened. The storm raged harder, and the farmhouse shook under the wind. Daniel placed more wood into the fire, the warm glow pushing back the darkness. She watched him, confused. Why was he working so hard to keep her warm, to keep her alive? He owed her nothing, yet he gave her everything he could. Suddenly, a loud crash came from outside. The alien girl flinched, her eyes wide with panic. Daniel grabbed a lantern and stepped toward the door. Through the rain he saw part of the barn. Roof had collapsed under the storm. The animals inside cried out in fear. Daniel rushed outside, fighting the wind. She sat frozen, torn between fear of leaving and fear of being left behind. Moments later she stood, her body weak but her spirit pushing her forward. She stumbled to the door, rain hitting her face like needles. In the distance she saw Daniel pulling wood, trying to fix the roof while calming the frightened animals. He was soaked, his hands bleeding from splinters. But he did not stop. For the first time she saw strength in him. Not the strength of weapons or war, but the strength of heart. Something stirred inside her. Her people had always measured power by ships, by armies, by fire. But here was a man with nothing but his hands and his will. And still, he fought to protect what was his, and strangely, he had chosen to protect her too. When Daniel returned, soaked and shivering, she was waiting at the door. Without words, she held out the blanket to him. He froze for a moment, surprised, then took it with a grateful nod. They sat by the fire again, both wrapped in silence. But this time the silence was not heavy, it was gentle, like a bridge forming between them. As the night fell, the storm outside calmed. The alien girl closed her eyes, whispering a word from her language Daniel could not understand, but he guessed what it meant. It was a word of thanks. And though she still carried the ashes of her world in her heart, in this small farmhouse, she had found her first shelter. In the storm, yet outside, beyond the quiet forest, danger still moved. The crash of her ship had not gone unseen. Others were coming, and the fragile peace between alien and human would soon be tested. The morning came soft and quiet. The storm had passed, leaving the earth damp and shining under the first rays of sunlight. Daniel stepped outside to check the damage to the barn, while inside the farmhouse, the alien girl sat near the fire, staring into the flames. The fire reminded her of another fire, not the safe glow of burning wood, but the fire that had swallowed her world. Her eyes grew heavy with memories, her chest tight as if smoke still filled her lungs. She saw her people, proud and strong. She saw the towers of glass and light that once touched the skies of her home. She remembered the day the sky turned black, warships descended like vultures, and the ground shook with endless thunder. Her people fought, but their strength was nothing against betrayal. All eyes who once smiled at them had turned their weapons upon them. In hours, everything was gone. A sound pulled her from the memory. Daniel had returned, carrying tools, his hands rough with work. He noticed her face, pale and lost. He spoke softly, but she could not answer. How could she explain her world's death in a language he did not know? She picked up a piece of charcoal from the hearth. Slowly, on the wooden floor, she drew a circle for her planet, tall spires for her cities. Then she drew fire falling from the sky, ships with sharp wings, and then only ashes. Daniel watched in silence, his chest heavy. The drawings were rough, but the pain in her eyes told him everything. Her world had burned, her people destroyed. She was the last piece of something great now turned to dust. She looked at him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. For a moment, Daniel felt the weight of her loneliness. No words could fill that emptiness. No comfort could erase that pain. But still, he knelt and placed his hand gently on the floor beside her drawing. It was not much, but it was his way of saying, "You are not alone now." The alien girl lowered her head. Her hands trembled, her breath uneven. She whispered her people's name, their language strange but filled with sorrow. Daniel repeated the word clumsily, as he had with her name. She looked at him, surprised. He had not understood the meaning.